Well, hello everybody and welcome to you all, and thank you for joining us for our latest talk in our Wellbeing series. And today's focus is all about how to build unstoppable resilience. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Sarah Austin and I'm the founder of the Really Helpful Club. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with Really Helpful Club, I thought it would be helpful to give you some background as to who we are and what our community is all about before we introduce you to our speaker this morning. And our team each come from professional corporate backgrounds. I was a senior fund manager in the city. Caroline Edwards, our events director, was a leading barrister. And Rowan and Francesca, who run Really Helpful Club in Surrey, Sussex and Hampshire, both had successful careers in PR. And we've each taken career breaks, and we're now on our journey building this vibrant and fast-growing community together. So what is Really Helpful Club? Well, it is an online network that brings together positive and open-minded people to help and connect one another in our personal and our business lives. And when I launched Really Helpful Club, I wanted to create a community of positive people, a place to share advice and connect with others. And our vision is to be a supportive community, one that delivers trusted resources and valuable connections at every stage in life. And now, 7 years on, we have grown into a unique network of like-minded people, a vibrant and a collaborative community of well over 15,000 members. And our community is made up of mainly women in their 30s to 60s facing real life challenges. And our members share and listen, supporting and empowering each other through key stages of life, from the early years parenting and career breaks, to the emotional needs of teenagers, returning to work, career progression, and the health challenges of midlife, as well as caring for elderly parents. And it's our shared journeys that bind our community and is our greatest asset. And we'd like to invite you to join our community if you haven't already done so. It's free to be a member, and it will give you access to our events, resources, and a weekly newsletter with all the latest information and updates. And we'll pop a registration link into the chat, and we'll look forward to welcoming you to our vibrant and fast-growing community. And we have an exciting program of talks and workshops. So please make sure you visit the website regularly, look out for newsletters, and be sure to contact Caroline Edwards about our events program. Now, all our webinars and online events are recorded, so please contact Caroline if you see something on this slide that you've missed and you'd like to be able to access the recording. And likewise, if you see one of the events coming up and you want to be able to book into those, visit the website or contact Caroline to make sure that you can book your place. Now, today's workshop is the latest in our wellbeing program. And if the last couple of years have shown us anything, it's this. Most people are really after the same thing. It's to overcome hardship, get along better with people, and deal with stress, and move past disappointments in personal and professional life. We want to handle the curveballs thrown at us and prosper despite them. And most people are after resilience as a strategy, a skill and mindset to help them navigate life. And resilience is something that we build day by day. It takes curiosity, courage, and confidence. And it's so much more than just the ability to bounce back. And when we practice it, resilience rewards us with opportunities for positive growth and learning. And we're delighted to be joined today by Alison Coates. Alison owns Revo Consultant, which specializes in leadership and workshop coaching and training, leveraging emotional intelligence and resilience tools and techniques. And Alison will be sharing emotional intelligence practices to help you to cope with uncertainty, adapt to stressful situations, and move into a strong mindset. And before I hand over to Alison, I'd like to share with you just a little bit of housekeeping and guidance about the format and timing. Today's session will last an hour. It's going to be very informative, but it's also a very safe space. And this is for you, and it's about you. Please pop your questions and comments into the chat box. You can do this for everyone to be able to see, or you can send them privately to Caroline so that she can collate these and she'll be able to chair the questions and answer session a bit later on. And if you do have any comments, please do engage in the chat box. It's really nice to hear where you're dialing in from. It's really interesting to know what attracted you to the workshop and the topic. And also, we think it's incredibly helpful for other people taking part in the talk to understand your experiences as well. So please, if you're able to, do engage in the conversation. Now, we're delighted to be able to send you a recording of the talk. So there's no need to take screenshots. There's no need for you to take notes unless you want to. We just want you to listen, enjoy what the speaker has to say, and to get as much out of today as possible. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Alison.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I'm just going to get my slides on. They should all now be able to see my slides. Okay, so we've all, can I just quickly get a thumbs up? My slides showing? That's fantastic. Thank you very much for that wonderful introduction. And it's wonderful to be able to be here today. And like we were saying a little while earlier when we were sitting while everyone was joining, how amazing is it that we can all dial in from different parts of the world and feel as if we are sharing an experience almost in the same room together. Building unstoppable resilience. This, for me, is something that I spoke quite a lot about in 2020, given where we were with what was going on in the world. And I wanted to share with everybody here in the Really Helpful Club, not just about what resilience is, but really about how we can go about building the kind of resilience that supports us day in and day out. The first thing I'd like to do, though, is I'd really like to ask you a quick question. How focused do you plan on being with us here today? You can answer this question on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is quite low. In other words, you're super distracted. There's lots of other things going on. You can hear a voice. You're not quite sure what it's all about, but you hear in body, maybe not so much in levels of concentration. Perhaps, though, you are aware that you're in this session with us here today, but at the back of your mind, you know that the phone is going to ring, so you're just waiting. Or maybe there's going to be a ring at the doorbell. There's that something shiny other thing that might draw your attention away from the conversation here today. Or perhaps between an 8 and a 10, you're sitting at that like wonderful focused level of attention where you are, the only thing that you're aware of is actually the fact that you're in this session. Fantastic. I've got some 10s coming in there and I love it. A 9 aiming for a 10. Thank you so much to Grace for that. Fantastic. I'm loving these. I've got an 8. And, you know, the thing is, it doesn't really matter whether you are showing up here as a 1 or a 10. What matters is you notice. How are you showing up? And in that moment of noticing, we can choose to adapt. In that moment of noticing that this is how we are showing up right here, right now, we can choose to do that one thing that's going to move us closer to a 10. Maybe it's just taking 2 deep breaths just to settle and calm the nerves. Maybe it's turning your phone upside down. You will know that one thing to bring you closer to a 10. And this exercise, the reason why I'm doing this exercise, will become apparent as we go through the session. So thank you so much to the Really Helpful Club for having this platform where we can come together and learn together. I work with my clients on 3 levels. I work with my clients to support them in building their own awareness of self, others, and the wider world. When we do this, it enables us, it allows us to connect and collaborate at a far more engaging level. I use a lot of emotional intelligence tools. I've got tricks, I've got artifacts, I've got assessments, lots of different things, but mainly it's all about understanding how the brain works and how our emotions determine our decisions and our behaviors. This really allows us to focus on our people skills, our human factor skills, and therefore our results. And why do I talk about the topic of resilience so much? Well, when we start to understand that the future is faster than any of us can ever imagine, change is happening every single moment of every single day. In our professional lives and in our personal lives, we've got to get comfortable with uncertainty. We've got to be able to build the kind of resilience that allows us to navigate this change on a day-to-day basis. So today, we're going to talk about what is resilience? What does it mean to you? And I'm going to give you a working definition of resilience. I'm going to talk about the science behind resilience, because I believe that when we can understand the mechanics behind something, it starts to make a little bit more sense and becomes more meaningful. And then I always like to leave my sessions, my delegates, my candidates with something to take away. So we're going to give you 5 habits, daily habits that you can practice each and every day. And I promise you already now, you are already practicing these habits. So we will get to those at the end of the session. But first of all, let's use the chat again. And I would love for you just to pop into the chat. I'm just going to move my camera out the way. It's just hidden the chat feature. There we go. I couldn't actually see the chat. What does resilience mean for you? Pop it into the chat because I would love to know, what does resilience mean for you? Let's see if we've got the ability to cope with change in a positive way. I love that, Tracy. Yes. Positivity, you'll see, is one of the cornerstones. Keeping going even when things get tough. Finding courage, lovely, Grace, to continue when I'm not feeling it. Beautiful. I love these emotive words. Bounce, not break when you face adversity. Lovely. Not giving up. Fantastic. Love all these definitions that are coming through. The ability to bounce back. Thank you, Carol. Let me share with you some of the things that for me, resilience is a little bit less of. There are 3 key things. Resilience is not avoiding challenge. It's not about adopting that shiny syndrome where we are constantly drawn away or distracted by the easy thing, the shiny thing. Resilience is about facing up to our challenges. It's not about enduring your challenges. In South Africa, we've got this wonderful word called vasbyt, which literally means to hang on with your teeth. That's not what resilience is all about. It's not about enduring that challenge. And this last point might be controversial, but for me, resilience is not about bouncing back. Because when we bounce back, where do we go? We go back to status quo. When we bounce back, we go back to the place where the challenge, the problem, or the issue, or the adversity happened in the first place. I'm going to invite you to look at resilience from 3 different areas. I'm South African and I love that word, vasbyt. Thank you, Tracy. Where are you from? I'm from Durban. You can pop it into the chat. So for me, resilience is all about letting go and learning. Letting go of those strong and unproductive emotions that keep us captive in the status quo. letting go of disappointment, of judgment, of criticism, of stress even, and learning through the experience. Because when we learn, we grow and we build our skills. Resilience is also about adapting during adversity. It's that wonderful mindset that we often talk about these days, agility, of being able to be a little bit more fluid, of blending a little bit more so that we can move through adversity. And finally, resilience is about moving forward with a new mindset. So we do bounce back, but we've got to also move forward with that new mindset, which allows us to work through the adversity and learn. So the new working definition that I'm proposing is it's the ability to let go of strong emotions, disappointments, failure, to adapt, and also to keep moving forward with that new mindset. So if this is our definition, and I just want to highlight a couple of words on our definition, emotions and mindset. How do we then understand resilience from a mindset perspective? And here we come back to our brain at work. Our brains have got a primary organizing principle that is all about our survival. It's the key role that our brains play each and every day. We are constantly, and especially in this busy, noisy, overwhelming digital world that we live in right now, being flooded with stimuli. And if our brain didn't have this organizing principle, we would be surprised 24/7 because we'd be overwhelmed by all of this information that's flooding towards us. And so to deal with this, and not getting too much into the science, but our brain is really just making two decisions. Is this safe or is this dangerous? Now, we don't have ragged-toothed dinosaurs running around in our living rooms or in our boardrooms or running down the high street. In the modern world, is this safe or is this dangerous? And so our brain's organizing principle is either inviting us to pay attention because it feels safe, meaningful, rewarding, or it's telling us to move away, to be distracted because it's dangerous or risky. So the organizing principle is either drawing us towards experiences and inviting us to pay attention, or pulling us away from an experience. The problem is that organizing principle is not even. It is primed to notice the risky, stressful, dangerous experiences for our survival so that we can live another day. So neuroscience tells us when we understand how our emotions are chemical experiences first in the brain that either tell our thinking brain to pay attention or tell our thinking brain to run away, fight or flight. The way we feel about events determines and influences our decisions in the moment and our behavior. This influences our ability to make productive decisions and take positive, I think Sarah spoke about positive earlier, action. Looking at this another way, our emotions influence our decisions and our behaviors. When we are primed for productive, pleasant emotions, feel-good hormones are released. Remember, our emotions are always a chemical or hormonal reaction first. Dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and our endorphins oxytocin, that wonderful connection hormone, builds trust. It helps us to connect and to communicate with other people. When we're going through tough times, psychological safety is so important. We need trust. We need to know that we can communicate with our colleagues, with our family members, with people that we are close to, or maybe even people that we need to get to know because they might be able to support us. When we're primed for these productive, pleasant emotions, we're better able to think more expansively. We can actually think in a more creative way. We're better able to work on our goals. And the magic thing here, we follow instructions. Think about people in your team, or maybe somebody who's close to you who's going through a tough time. When we can influence people to be in those positive, productive emotions, we support them in being able to work on their goals and follow instructions. We support them in being able to build resilience. On the other side of the coin, when we're primed for stress, anxiety, overwhelm, confusion, judgment, criticism constantly, cortisol, the stress hormone, is released. And over time, the stress hormone shuts down the thinking brain. When the thinking brain starts to be shut down, we become far more blinkered. We're less likely to be open-minded and have a broad perspective. We are more likely to be defensive and very sensitive. In this state of mind, in this mindset, it's very difficult to problem solve, because it's very difficult to let go of the thing that has caused us the confusion, or the person, or the story even that we are attached to. So our emotions are really important when we're wanting to build resilience, because pleasant, productive emotions broaden and build. They help us problem solve. They help us to think more expansively. Unpleasant, unproductive emotions narrow and limit. We become far more defensive and very blinkered in our thinking. So resilience is a muscle. We have got to practice resilience on a day-to-day basis. Flex it often enough, and we start to build the confidence and the trust to overcome the difficulties, to keep moving forward. Let's have a look at some of these emotional responses in action. So something happens in the office. We get an email, we're in a meeting, and we start to feel a little bit anxious about what is going on. It's easy in that anxiety and stress, when this is happening to us day in and day out, we become far more narrow-minded in our thinking, and we start to feel as if we cannot cope. We start to feel stressed about the fact that we cannot cope. Perhaps our response to not being able to cope is to blame, to look for somebody else to blame ourselves, to be critical of ourselves, to be judgmental of decisions or things that we've done. And soon, before we know it, we're in this reactive circular event where we are moving between stressed reaction, starting to feel even more uncertain about what to do, how to behave, what to say, how do I navigate this challenging conversation? And the cycle repeats itself, stress upon uncertainty and overwhelm. Who here has experienced days like this, where things have just seemed to, no matter what, we can't seem to get out of this circular event where we can't think straight even? . These are your emotions at play. Now, what we can do when we understand that our emotions are first a chemical experience, and we can notice these emotions starting to rise. And before we express our emotions, in noticing them, we can do a couple of things. In noticing our emotions, before we express them, we can start to take the steps to adapt. And this is why I asked you at the beginning, how focused do you plan to be? Notice where your attention was at. And I then invited you to adapt. Choose one thing to draw yourself closer to the mindset that you would like to be in. When we learn to notice and we practice the habits that allow us to be mindful and present, or perhaps practice the habits that allow us to self-regulate, like take 3 deep breaths when we notice we're feeling stressed or overwhelmed. Just calm that nervous system down. It allows us to let go of that strong and unproductive emotion. It allows us to, in that moment of letting go, choose how we are going to adapt. It allows us to think more clearly, to think expansively, to have an open mind, and to start to problem solve. And when we can start to do this, we can move forward. And in moving forward, we gain more certainty and confidence about our ability to navigate the challenge, to focus on solutions. And in doing so, we respond rather than react. We can respond in a creative, problem-solving, solution-focused way. And this allows us to really reduce that stress experience. We are going to experience stress. We are going to experience anxiety, confusion, and overwhelm. The trick is to notice when you do and choose in that moment, by noticing and adapting, to move into a more productive emotion or a more productive mindset. There are many tools that we can use that allow us to really calm that stress response down. The one that we have at our fingertips every single day is our breath. And I know it sounds really trite, and you're probably hearing your mother in the back of your mind saying, Alison, take 3 deep breaths and calm down. Let me tell you, your mom was a very wise woman, because those 3 deep breaths are all that you need in some moments. But it really is about that awareness of self that allows us in that moment to notice. So if there's one thing that I'm going to encourage you all to start to do as we navigate the rest of today, the rest of this week, just notice where you're at with your emotions, and whether you're attached to a strong and unproductive emotion, or whether you're moving through something that is far more meaningful and supportive. All of our emotions are valid. We notice and we adjust. Now, from a resilience perspective, noticing is one of our habits. So I promised you at the beginning I was going to give you 5 habits. And I also said to you at the beginning that you are already practicing these 5 habits, because I honestly believe that what resilient people do is not special. We are all resilient. I am resilient. You are resilient. We each practice resilience each and every day, possibly without really noticing that we are. So this next section is in the format of a quiz. So again, feel free to use the chat. I can just see there are some messages in the chat. I'm going to quickly just catch up. Yes, Sarah, once you've got that feeling of stress, it's difficult to change the cycle. I agree with you. And that's why those 3 deep breaths are really helpful. Breathe in for the count of 2, in through the nose. You can hold your breath for a count of 2. Breathe out for a count of 4, always breathing out twice as long as we breathe in. And really just allowing your breath to connect back to calm. So yes, it can be difficult, but with practice and with noticing, it does become easier. Okay, so are you ready for your quiz? There's 5 quick questions I'm going to ask you. Question number 1. In the last 10 days, have you, yes or no, had to practice discipline? Have you had to practice discipline around how much time you were scrolling on your iPhone, or how much TV you're watching, how disciplined you've had to be around healthy eating maybe? I'm seeing a yes, I'm seeing a yes. Have you had to practice discipline about being focused? Like, okay, Alison, for the next 20 minutes, we're just going to focus on this one thing. I'm seeing lots of yeses. Fantastic. Well, here is the secret around resilience. If you answered yes to all of these, you are demonstrating self-discipline, and self-discipline is the first habit that resilient people demonstrate. It's the discipline to accept when we've moved into those unproductive emotions, and in that ability to accept without judgment, without criticism, it allows us to let go and move forward. It's the discipline to start within. We know that we need to work on our own mindsets, our own emotional state, to be primed for that positive, optimistic outlook. It's the discipline to practice being disciplined. So, what challenge would you like to set yourself for the rest of the week? Maybe it's drinking 8 glasses of water. Sometimes that takes discipline to get through all 8. Maybe it's going to the gym 3 times this week. What task would you like to set yourself as a challenge that you could practice being disciplined about? Because when we can practice it in the small things, it's far easier when we need to demonstrate it in the big challenges. And plan for it. So when you've set yourself a goal, when you've set yourself a challenge, what are the things that might stop you from being able to achieve it? What are the obstacles in your way? If this happens, then I will. That's being disciplined. So we can adopt the habit of discipline by following these 4 things: self-acceptance, starting within, practicing being disciplined in the small stuff, and then planning for it. Right, question number 2. On a scale of 0 to 5, again, feel free to pop it into the chat. I would like to know how aware you have been of your emotions in the last 24 hours. So could you really recall emotions as being, I felt good, I felt fine, things were okay? Or is your vocabulary around your emotional state a lot more descriptive? I felt enthusiastic, I felt despair, I felt sorrow, I felt excited. A 4, fantastic. We've got some numbers coming up there. Let's see what else is coming up. Great. So anything below a 3, between a 1 and a 3, you're still aware that you've had some emotions in the day. Just invite you to take some time out at the end of every day to introduce some mindful moments where you can just reflect and think to yourself, how did I feel today? And if you're sitting in a 4 or 5, this is already a strength to you. We can leverage this because in our awareness of our emotions, it gives us that benefit, the joy of being able to notice. And this is why it's important for resilience. It's important for resilience because when we can be aware of our emotions, like I said, we can notice them when we're experiencing them before we express them. It allows us to let go of those strong and unproductive emotions. If you go onto my website, which you will get a link to a little bit later, in my resource page on my website, there is an emotional awareness tracker, which you can download. It's a great exercise that you can do just to draw some awareness around your emotions. But this speaks to being self-aware. Resilient people work on building their awareness of self. Question number 3. Well, not so much a question actually, but a did you know? Did you know that we are all biologically equipped to demonstrate empathy? So we all already have empathy. And empathy is one of the cornerstones of resilience, because empathy builds relationships and develops a keen sense of connectedness and belonging. Empathy enhances our overall sense of well-being. Empathy is not only about really appreciating where somebody else is coming from, but because it builds that sense of connectivity or connection to another human, it helps us to feel like we belong. And belonging is one of our primary needs next to food and shelter. When we feel like we belong, it creates a sense of trust for us in the community. So who can you reach out to today to help you to deepen a connection? When we can practice mindfully listening, really listening to what somebody has to say, rather than just listening to gather data, to listen for understanding, it helps us to build our perspective, to be open-minded, to build empathy. We've already said that being open-minded and building a perspective helps us to problem solve, helps you to practice resilience. And tuning in to tune out. How can we support ourselves in really tuning in to what's going on around us, engaging more deeply with the work that we're doing, the people that we're with, the conversations that we're having, so that we can deepen our experience of empathy with others. Empathy for me is the gateway to rapport and the gateway to building these strong relationships that will support us in navigating difficult times and in building resilience. Question number 4. Have you ever, and you can pop the yes or no into the chat, burnt your dinner, crashed a car, failed an exam, hurt somebody's feelings? I can say yes to all 4 of those. Unfortunately, had my first car accident 10 days after getting my driver's license. I'll never forget that experience. Frequently burnt the dinner, yes to all of these. And the most important thing is the statement at the bottom. Did you learn from this experience? Yes or no? Did you apply the lesson from that experience and take it forward into tomorrow? Because that's what resilient people do. Resilient people are comfortable with not always getting it right. Resilient people are comfortable with asking for feedback. How did I do? How could I do this better? What would you have done in a similar circumstance? Resilient people learn from their mistakes. They know that there's no lost opportunity. There's just learnings. Sometimes I didn't learn soon enough. Yes, Tracy, sometimes it takes us a little while because the messages, although they aren't clear, we're not listening. We're not open to them. So make it a habit to reflect. And here I encourage and I invite you When you notice you've been triggered by something, when you're feeling stressed or confused or overwhelmed, just pause and really think to yourself, what is it? What is that trigger that's got me stressed? Is it a fear of something? Is it because I don't know what to do? Or is it a tone of somebody else's voice? What is it? Start to build your own awareness, that concept again, of the things that are your triggers, because your triggers are your distractions and they are preventing you from moving forward through the challenge. They are keeping you in the status quo. And my last question, number 5. How many of you plan out your day or plan out your week? Maybe you don't plan it on a day-to-day basis, but you plan it at least a week out. Maybe you plan your meals. Maybe you plan how many times you might go to the gym. Maybe you plan out the different things you might need to get done through the week in order to organize children and family and work and all of these things. Yes, hour by hour. That's a good way to plan, Carol. It's planning at least. Lists. Yes, I love lists. I'm a fan of lists. The best part about my lists is at the end of the day when I can start to tick them off and throw that list away. Well, this is one of the cornerstones of resilience as well, because resilient people are intentional. Resilient people have a plan around how to face the day optimistically in a realistic way. I'm not talking about a Pollyanna type positivity. This is very realistic. I just wanted, somebody said, yes, that's funny. What does Sarah say that was funny? Practice the pause often. Okay, cool. But resilient people are intentional about planning for optimistic, positive outcomes. So plan, and this sounds a bit weird for those of you hearing it for the first time, but plan your emotions. So what are you going to be doing immediately after this webinar? Maybe you've got to go to another meeting. Maybe you've got to do something with the children. Maybe you need to do some chores at home. Before you start that thing, choose for yourself the emotion you want to take into that experience. I want to be confident in my meeting. I'd like to be friendly with my children. I would like to be energized around doing the household chores. Become intentional. In being intentionally positive isn't about being icky sweet and flavoring our day in that very in a fake way. It's very authentic. It's about choosing intentionally in the moment who we want to be. And like I said, when we can practice it with the easy stuff, it becomes easier with the hard stuff. So be intentional about today. No matter what memories or feelings are triggered, we can choose a different emotion. When you're feeling that energy rising, like Sarah was saying, it's difficult when the stress starts to rise. Be intentional about choosing calm. Breathe. Give your brain something else to do. Choose to count numbers. 2 + 2 is 4, 4 + 4 is 8. When we are logical, it's very difficult to be emotional. We can't often be say two things at the same time. Yes, the element of choice is very interesting, Sarah. And the more we work on our awareness around choice, especially our awareness on our emotions and our awareness around our emotional states, and we improve and we work on our emotional literacy, the words that we use to describe our emotions, the easier this choice becomes. And then lastly, we can, in the moment, plan for those things that will bring joy, connectedness, and increase our likelihood of positive emotions. So I'm asking you, do you know the kinds of things that energize you? If I had to say to you right here, right now, list out at least 3 things that you know you could do in the next 24 hours that bring you joy, that energize you. Would you be able to list those things like that? So start to build your awareness, again, self-awareness, one of the cornerstones of resilience, around those things that bring you joy. And these are your 5 habits, your 5 resilience habits. So what I say is what resilient people do is not special. Resilient people are self-disciplined, and you all answered yes to that question. You are already disciplined. Resilient people practice awareness of self, awareness of emotions, awareness of strengths, awareness of our blind spots as well. Resilient people understand the value and the benefit that empathy brings each and every day when we can approach and connect with others in a way that allows us to build rapport and deepen our connections. When we have that empathic ear for others, this allows us to be more expansive in our problem solving and more solution focused. Resilient people also understand that every opportunity, every time there's a failure, it's actually a learning opportunity. Resilient people are comfortable with being vulnerable. They ask for feedback and seek guidance. And lastly, resilient people are intentionally positive. We plan for positive experiences. We understand those things that bring us joy and energize us. We've got to fill our cup first so that we can support others. We've got to keep our cup full so that when the tough days come, we've got the reserves to be able to manage and cope. Do these 5 things resonate for you? Maybe only 1 or 2 do for now. And if they do, pop it into the chat and we can pick up on those in the Q&A session. So you might be thinking to yourself, well, how do I go about practicing and building and developing all of these skills? Well, like I said at the beginning, I don't like to leave you without giving you something that you can actually take away with you. So if you place your camera over the QR code there, it will direct you, and I've also popped the link into the chat. I'm just trying to do 2 things at the same time. There we go. It'll direct you to a page where you can actually download my 5 resilient factors. What we've discussed today were 5 resilient habits, but your factors are things like thinking factors, support, strengths, and with each of those, we've got 28 different top tips for how you might start to build resilience. But what's important to remember is just keep learning. Enjoy the challenge and know that every time you overcome a challenge, you are building resilience. You are tolerating ambiguity. You are learning how to cope and adapt to build the clarity that's going to bring you the answers to navigate that adversity, that difficulty, or that confusion. Thank you so much, everybody, for the session today. If I can see that my website was already popped into the chat. My LinkedIn is there for you. If you would like to connect with me on LinkedIn, Alison J. Coates, and my Facebook account as well. So I'm going to stop the share now, and we can open up for Q&A.
Thank you so much, Alison. Honestly, that was fantastic. I really love some of the points that you've made there. So a theme that's coming out in the comments, no questions so far, but do feel free, everyone, to sort of put some questions in the chat, is that it's very difficult to be intentionally positive if you are naturally pessimistic. So how do you go about that? How do you overcome that pessimism?
I think, well, not I think, I know. So we are all primed to notice the negative. And even from a young age, we were told, don't do that. You can't do that. You'll never be able to do that. I mean, I can't remember the number of times, perhaps as a child, I was told to stop or, not to do something. And our brains are also, we are hardwired to notice those risky, challenging, difficult times more. So it's not unusual. This is where the self-discipline aspect of resilience comes in. When you notice you're moving into that negative self-talk, when you notice you've moved into those negative beliefs, catch yourself. Practice that magical pause, take the 3 deep breaths and choose. And I say to my clients, if it feels uncomfortable to move into a positive state of mind, move into neutral. What feels comfortable for you? There's some wonderful tools on the web you can download if you're stuck with identifying different emotions. There's something called a wheel of emotions. Just Google wheel of emotions and it'll come up with a big colorful wheel with lots of different words describing lots of emotions. So you are not alone. It does take discipline and it takes awareness. And that's why resilience is something that we do each and every day. Great question.
Right. Let's see if there's anything else come through. Yes, I think fearing failure is an issue, isn't it, for most people? So again, if you come across something that you are worried about, imposter syndrome is a huge problem, especially for women. What do you think we can do to avoid feeling like, oh my God, when I'm not going to do this, it's just not going to work?
Where's your evidence that it's not going to work? Because oftentimes it's the stories we tell ourselves. So, and those stories are tied to an emotional experience. I encourage you just to take yourself to court, become, what's her name? Judge Judy. Is that her name? Judge Judy. And take yourself to court. Where is your evidence that you can't start, that you can't try, that you can't give yourself permission to be comfortable being uncomfortable? Call a friend, get an accountability buddy. But the most important thing for me really is just to, where is your evidence that you can't do this thing? Okay.
So right. So I recently had a major imposter syndrome moment. I had to give a speech to a very large conference following on from Cherie Blair, who is a very well-known QC. And I had enormous imposter syndrome. And I spoke to my family about it. And one of my boys said, Mum, remember, they asked you to speak, not the other way around. So they want you. And also, I used to be a barrister. So my mother was saying, the evidence is that you can do this. But it is very difficult when you're faced with a large audience who are presumably quite sort of looking for good content. It is very difficult to overcome that fear. So yes, you're absolutely, where's the evidence?
And
Right.
and if you want to take it an even, one step deeper in terms of thinking about where does my fear come from, we as adults, we fear a lack of competence. We fear a lack of likability. And the third one escapes me: competence, likability, oh gosh, significance. So when you move into that fear of failure, what is that failure being driven by? Competence, likability, or significance? And go and try and understand for yourself, where is that coming from? What are my triggers? Build that awareness of self. Fantastic. Yes, Grace, lovely book. Thank you for recommending that book. Feel the fear and do it anyway. Another great one is obviously Mel Robbins, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. that's another great book to read in terms of just getting into action.
So someone has mentioned about being undermined by colleagues in a toxic work environment. If you are surrounded by people who are constantly undermining you, especially in a work situation, what do you do other than change jobs, which is a drastic situation?
You know, speaking with my previous HR hats on, I mean, obviously your organization will have policies and steps that you can use if you feel you need to. But we can really only control ourselves. We can't control how other people respond or react. So if you find that you are constantly in the space or in an experience where you are surrounded by toxic people all the time, you can control that for yourself by working on your own mindset around the situation. Or like you say, you can control it by making a different choice for yourself. But what we can't do is change what other people are doing. So they will respond in the way that they will respond. With our own awareness, when we notice that we're starting to feel stressed or anxious by them, again, practice that pause. What are my options here? What can I control? What can't I control? What is best going to serve me? Sorry, Caroline.
I had a very interesting conversation with a Thrive consultant the other day, and she was explaining that people who are toxic like that, it actually is more about their problems and their issues than you. And so always bear that in mind. When someone is being unpleasant to you, it's their issue and not you. And I think that's it's like a complete turnaround to the way we normally feel. When someone's unpleasant to us, we think, I must have done something wrong. But actually it's not. It's more to do with their issues and the way they're feeling about themselves. I thought that was so helpful. It's something I've told my children now, because I think it's really important when they come across difficult individuals in life that you understand that it's more about them than you.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely agree with that.
Definitely.
And not to get hooked. Yes. Not to get hijacked by their story or their emotions.
They have the boss's ear. Not always, though, I think, Elizabeth. I think if you have a reasonable boss, they'll probably see that that toxic person is toxic. But I think it's all about, as you say, HR, Alison, and things like that being managed.
And I would just, I would say to you, if this is a consistent thing, then go and speak to your HR business partner or somebody at work that you feel you can trust around it, because that would be your first point of call, really, from a procedural perspective.
Fantastic. I think we should leave it there because it's gone half past. I'm going to pass back to Sarah. Thanks, Alison.
Thank you.
Sarah, is everything okay? We're handing back to you.
I'm just trying to share the screen. Something went wrong with that. Hang on. Just stand by. There we are. Okay, great. Alison, thank you very much indeed. I absolutely love this concept of being intentionally positive. And I think it's really interesting reading many of the comments that have been in the chat box during the course of this. And I think it's really important to have those 5 key habits that you've shared with us as a toolbox. And I think, it's been really interesting going through this journey just in this last hour in terms of how we can each make just those, I think, those small steps to build more resilience in our lives. So thank you very much. And thank you for such a fascinating and helpful talk. But also to everybody that's taken part, we hope that you've enjoyed it. But also thank you for all your engagement and your comments and your openness and your candor. I mean, it's been really, really helpful and insightful. Just to reiterate, we will send you a recording of the talk. We hope you enjoy being part of our vibrant and our trusted and our fast-growing community. And let me just finish and leave you with this. You know, as Alison has taught us, resilience is so much more than just bouncing back from tough days. It's a habit that we build every day by working on our mindset, our self-awareness, and by moving through those tough times. And remember, there is so much help and expert advice out there. Don't be afraid to ask for help. And we at Really Helpful Club are here to help you take your next step forward. Thank you very much for your time, and thank you for joining us today.